Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this second webinar uh, being conducted by the Calcutta Management Association. These are uncertain and challenging times. We at the Calcutta Management Association felt that we should do our bit to try and help our members and the management fraternity by suggesting ways and means of navigating this crisis. We therefore decided that we would provide a platform where eminent business leaders would share their visions and experiences of leading their organizations during different times. With this in mind, we launched a series of webinars, and we plan to invite some of the distinguished minds of the country to talk about leadership in turbulent times. The inaugural speaker of the series, Mr. Gopalakrishnan, shared his thoughts on the subject. Today, we are proud to have with us Mr. Harshavardhan Neotia, one of the most respected business leaders of India and the past president of All India Management Association, AIMA. He will share with us his thoughts on the subject with us. We are immensely grateful to Mr. Neotia for all the support that he extends to the Calcutta Management Association, always. And we are thankful to him for being with us today. I personally look forward to this session, and I'm sure it will be a great learning experience for all of us. I'll now request Mr. G.M. Kapoor, a very senior member of our committee, to formally welcome and introduce Mr. Neotia and also anchor the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Datta. It's a great pleasure indeed to welcome Mr. Harsh Neotia. I would, of course, like to introduce him with a cliche that he needs no introduction, but at the same time, it is my duty to do so. Mr. Harshavardhan Neotia is a Padma Shri awardee, a real estate entrepreneur, a connoisseur of art, craft, and other creative pursuits. Mr. Harshavardhan Neotia juggles many hats with equal elan. As chairman of Ambuja Neotia Group, he operates across the spectrum of the real estate industry, gifting Kolkata and Eastern India with landmark properties ranging from residential to retail, from hospitals to hotels, from educational institutions to workplaces. A pioneer in India's social housing sector, Mr. Neotia has been conferred with the Padma Shri by the Honorable President of India in 1999. Having attended La Martinia for Boys, Kolkata for his having attended La Martinia for Boys, Kolkata for his school education, he obtained his BCom degree from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, and went on to complete the Owner-President Management Program, OPM, from the Harvard Business School, USA. He is also a recipient of the YPO Legacy of Honor Award in 2005. He was recently conferred the D.Litt Honoris Causa by the Vidyasagar University, West Bengal. His other associations are as the past president of FICCI and AIMA. He is also a member of several distinguished institutions like India Brand Equity Foundation Trust, established by the Government of Commerce, Department of Commerce, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India, the Governing Council of the India Design Council, and the Board of Trustees for Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, and Chairman of National Institute of Technical Teachers Training and Research, Kolkata. He heads Gyan Prabha, a Center for Cultural Studies and Research in Varanasi, as its chairman, and also serves as the Honorary Consul for Israel in West Bengal. I always marvel at his plate, how he manages to do so much in so little time. It's wonderful to have you with us, Mr. Neotia, and now it's over to you to take up the topic for discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapoor. Thank you, Amitavada. Thank you, the other office bearers of the CMA. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you, dear listeners, for being here today. Well, I will speak for a few minutes and then I hope we can have a little more interactive session because it would be perhaps a little more useful for me to respond to things that you have in your mind. Now, of course, we are meeting at a time when we have the COVID-19 crisis over our head. So I'm sure every one of you would like to understand what this means in terms of our life and particularly our livelihood. Without a doubt, this is massive. It is probably the biggest crisis that humanity has seen in at least our living memory. And clearly, the way forward is full of uncertainty and challenges. Where this crisis takes a very special turn is because this virus, unlike any of its other cousins, be it SARS, MERS, or Ebola, or anything else, can infect you and you can remain asymptomatic for many, many days. While you remain asymptomatic, you have no idea that you have contracted the disease, you can easily infect other people. And it's not like you have to really be in a tight embrace with anyone to infect. You could actually infect somebody just because he came and sat on a table where you happened to be sitting half an hour ago and you had probably sneezed on it. Now, this is what makes this extremely difficult to uh, contain the spread because it is so easy to spread it. And most importantly, even people can spread it who have no idea that they have it. So this is really what makes this a disease that is quite frightening. And at the moment, the good news, of course, is that the mortality rates are not very high. Uh, it's not as lethal as the other ones. The infectability is very, very high. And yet, at this particular moment, as we talk, there is no proper, let's say, scientifically tested medicine, and certainly there is no vaccine. Now, I'm going to keep the medical side of this aside because I'm sure that A, I'm not the right person to speak about it, and B, there's enough on the media, and I'm sure everyone who's listening to this are watching the media closely. I will concentrate on speaking about what I think are the implications from an economic standpoint. Now, obviously, we know that the country has been under lockdown and probably it will carry on for most of May, at least in most parts of India, with some opening up in some areas that are considered green or relatively safe, and with a lot of restrictions. And then going forward, it may be also not very easy to work for several months because it will be a staggered opening with lots of restrictions. So the main concern that I have is that one is the opening, and second is how do we get back to normal and start the consumption cycle? See, I would like to put some statistics in front of you. You know, the top 10-15% of the people who are spending maximum amount of money are the ones who take decisions. Now, if they are going to have a sense of fear that they should not step out, this infection can be very problematic, the consumption cycle would be impacted. People will not go out much, they will therefore not consume much. Obviously, they would prefer staying away from shopping, etc. And a very large part of our economy is run on non-essential items. Of course, people will have to step out for food and some basic essentials like medicines, etc. But let us say going normally shopping, uh, it's quite possible that it is. It's quite possible that people would avoid uh, shopping malls. And I think for all of us, if you think very deeply, for the next 6 months, if you don't buy anything virtually other than food and medicines, we can happily survive without any difficulty. So every non-essential item potentially can get postponed. Therefore, the important thing is that while the lockdown is lifted and when it is lifted, it's important to see how we can allay the fears of the people. Now, this is obviously not going to happen till one of the three things happen. Either there is a medical protocol that comes out which says that, okay, if you unfortunately get infected, there is a process and you can be cured. The second is that there's a vaccine that gets developed, which of course will take time. And the third is that there is a sense that this disease is not that lethal. It's like getting a common flu or something like that, maybe a little more than that. And pretty much after a week or 10 days, everyone would be fine. Unless one of those three things happen, the fear will not go. And if the fear does not go, the economic cycle will be really difficult to come back. The other issue is that because of this lockdown and whatever damage it has caused, most businesses, the architecture and their finances have been completely destroyed. Now, as a result, to rebuild that will be a Herculean challenge. Hardly we know that we were going through a slowdown even before this crisis. And now this has been really a very, very fatal blow to the cash flow of most companies. So companies will, except for, of course, very, very large and a few companies, most companies will really struggle to meet their ends. This will mean cutbacks in various expenses. Expenses that companies cut back means it is cutting back on someone's business and someone's income. There will be job cuts, there will be wage cuts. All of this is going to ultimately lead to a spiral of lower consumption, lower employment, and all the other ills that come. Now, I give an example that it's like a car which has fallen into a ditch. If it has fallen into a ditch, no matter how dexterous the driver is and how good the car is, it is very difficult to pull it out unless you get a few people to give it a little bit of a push from the back and to push it out of the ditch. Now, this push, this very critical push that the economy needs, of course, it needs it only once the opening up happens, is really the fiscal and monetary policy push that the government can give. It's quite understandable that their priorities are at this moment to see that the poorest of the poor are supported and to see that the migrant workers, the farmers, etc., are able to find a livelihood. So that's where one of the important focus of any government in our kind of economy has to be. And also they must be preoccupied also with the huge medical challenge as a consequence of this lockdown and the disease spreading that is preoccupying the minds. So we are hopeful and we keep our fingers crossed that there is a significant fiscal and monetary policy push that industries also get to enable them to so-called probably push this car out of the ditch, and so that once it is back on the road, hopefully there won't be too much damage caused to the car. There might be a few bruises here and there. Maybe you'll require to go for servicing, but you'll be able to drive the car. Now, this is really how I see very, very broadly what the situation is. uh, I think what I will do is I'll take a pause here because I can keep going on and speaking, but I might not be answering the questions that people have. So let me go back to you, Kapoor Saab or Amitavada, whoever would like to ask the questions. And maybe if there's something more that I want to add, I can add in between. Thank you.
Thank you, Harshji, for that very brief and interesting opening remarks. If I may ask you the opening question with respect to leadership in turbulent times, do you see whether leadership in turbulent times and leadership in normal times are two different aspects, or a leader is a good leader in all circumstances? Why I ask this question is, one very oft repeated example is of Winston Churchill, who became the Prime Minister of England during the war years, and he led very, very effectively. But when it came to peacetime, he lost the elections. Of course, this is a political scenario. I'm just talking about leadership in general. So I'd like your opinion on this.
Well, leadership is certainly certain traits of leadership are supposed to be demonstrated all through, whether it is in good times or turbulent times. But the mettle of leadership, the tenacity of leadership is certainly tested in adverse circumstances in a much more deeper way than it is tested when things are not as troublesome as they are presently. Now, the cornerstone of leadership will be to dive deep into the character of that person, because the circumstances in front of us are, challenging. Now, how do you come to a response? What is it in your hand to respond? It's how you look at the problem and how you look at it holistically, rather than to look at it very self-centeredly. That is to me, one of the important aspects of leadership that get tested. Of course, this is not true only in such circumstances, it's true in normal circumstances as well. But it is tested here. The other thing, of course, is how you can be equitable. There are so many people, there are so many stakeholders, all of which are impacted by the circumstances. How can you be equitable and not be unduly biased to one particular category of stakeholders? So that becomes another matter of importance. So I would say a leader is a good leader at any given time, but this is the time for him to really be, जिसको बोलते हैं अग्नि परीक्षा का समय है.
That's excellent, Harshji, very, very succinctly put. And as you said, equitability and fairness is going to be a very important aspect in today's day. I have a question here from Mr. Sudipta Roy, who is the CPRO of Exide Industries. The housing and hospitality sectors are predicted to bear the brunt of the COVID-19 phenomena. What is your take on this, and how long do you think the industries will take to come out of it?
Well, it's a no-brainer that tourism and hospitality, closely followed by real estate, are the worst impacted sectors in this crisis. Very clearly, I don't see travel resuming very quickly. For various reasons, people will want to not have outsiders coming into your zone. People generally would be reluctant to travel. Of course, when things open up for a short while, there will be a lot of travel because a lot of people are stranded in various parts of the world and in various parts of India. But that is stranded as in people coming back home, not tourists coming or not businessmen coming. So clearly, hotels will have very, very low occupancies, just like airlines will have very few takers. And hospitality, as in restaurants and banquet venues, etc., will also take a similarly long time to recover, because it's a very discretionary spend, and people will only want to go there if they are feeling like going there, if they have disposable income, and if they're feeling safe. Of course, within that, there will be a categorization. Some more, I would say, better operated units with greater professionalism will probably have some better takers than others, but it will still be very much lower than it was, let's say, in February of this year. As far as real estate is concerned, in the very short term, there will be a problem, a serious problem, because everyone will have lost so much money that they would have been having a cash flow challenge. I think they would like to postpone their decisions for house purchase in general, but that doesn't mean that some people won't, but in general. But the good news, I think, is that we have spent so much time at home in the last 40 days and perhaps for another 20 days that people have understood the importance of home and therefore also the importance of space. I think also this whole idea of working from home, like we're doing a conference today with probably 200 people, but none of us are together. And whether it's the speaker or the moderator or the people who are listening are all sitting in their homes. So this will be the new normal, and a lot of things can be done from home. So ultimately, people would like to invest in homes with little more space, upgrade their homes so that they can actually work from home in a more efficient manner. Particularly if there are many members in the family, they would like to have a little corner so that each person can have their privacy and do their work without disturbing other family members. So this will come back, real estate will come back, but with a little bit of a lag.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Dr. J.N. Mukhopadhyay, Director of the Heritage Business School, and he's also an executive committee member of CMA. What are the common traits of a great business leader? This is a general question, but what are the traits of a great business leader?
Well, I suppose to begin with, he must be somebody who inspires confidence to his team, somebody who can gain the trust of the various stakeholders, and somebody who has some vision of what he wants to do, because to galvanize people to work on some common objective, that objective has to be compelling, interesting, and inspiring. So these are there. Of course, the other aspects of honesty, of being fair, of being a good person to work with. All those traits are common, but then I think those are leadership traits that apply for anything, not just for business.
Okay. Then there's Dr. Mukhopadhyay has another question. What are the early signs of detecting business failure and business fraud? Of course, these are two different things, but business failure or business fraud can lead to business failure. But anyway, he asked, what are the early signs of detecting business failure and business fraud?
Well, honestly, it's very difficult because if you could, you wouldn't have them. So the fact that you have them means they have gone undetected for some reason. Now, business failure can happen for various reasons. Besides the fact that it can happen because you landed up doing stupid things, it's also possible that there is a cataclysmic change that happens. Now, for instance, a black swan event like the pandemic that we are undergoing, or for that matter, even other events, suddenly makes a whole idea that you're working on obsolete. Or, somebody set up a hotel right now, maybe 6 months ago, and for the next 1.5 years, he's going to be faced with the prospect of, virtually empty rooms. It's going to be a business failure, but what could he really do? I mean, could he really imagine that such an event could happen? I suppose there are certain situations of business failures for which it is impossible to predict. Even, for instance, when commodity cycles moved away to crude was $0 or even minus just a few weeks ago. Who would imagine that something that was selling for $140 about 5 years ago would actually be almost down to $0 and perhaps now around $20, $25. Commodity cycles that can throw any business model that is based on a particular pricing completely out of gear without any pre-warning that such a so there are very difficult to know. As far as fraud is concerned, well, certainly loose systems and loose audit mechanisms can propitiate a greater possibility of fraud. But to say that anything can be foolproof, well, then no fraud would exist in some of the very, very tightly controlled government systems, or even in large corporates, or even in banks, and even in credit cards with so much of security features, you do see people hack in and create a fraud. So I'm sure that there is some laxity, or perhaps some super intelligence of the fraudulent mind that sometimes cracks open a code, and it's always this chore police ka game. You fix that, and then somebody else figures out some other way. So this probably in a fringe sense will continue to happen as far as I can think, because it's never stopped in the history that I'm aware of.
Great. Now, I have a question from Mr. Somen Barua, industrial consultant, Bokaro Steel City. His question is to do with the coronavirus. So medical reports suggest that people will continue to be infected by coronavirus for some time to come. As a business leader, what, according to you, are the best strategies to deal with the problem in the construction industry, which employs a large number of migrant labor?
Well, see, already with the preliminary guidelines that have come from the government on how to partially open up the construction, we can see that full-fledged construction activity as we knew it a couple of months ago will not be possible anymore. So one of the things that will happen is construction work will slow down, and you will take much longer to complete the projects than you had originally planned, because if you follow all the norms and the social distancing, and also, of course, we have to understand that migrant labor will be a challenge for at least a few months, because they are shocked out of their wits. If they have gone back home, they're really going to think a lot before coming back to work. The conditions in which they normally stay at whatever hired facilities that they take up near the construction project sites certainly don't provide for social distancing and other safety measures. So all that will be an issue. Even when lockdown improves and things open up, many migrant labor which is stuck in various parts of India would like to rush back home and meet their families, because they are feeling lonely and lost. So there is going to be all these difficulties. What can you do? Well, these are the circumstances that have been thrown at us. You have to navigate it with the limitations that stand in front of us. In general, we have to be very frugal. We have to ration our resources. We need to know that the 6 to 9 months at least is going to be a very, very difficult period from a cash flow point of view. Every rupee has to be spent only what is essential to save livelihoods, but not lifestyles. So you have to see that people who work for you are able to survive, but obviously not live the life that they are accustomed to. And that applies to every stakeholder, be it contractors, be it employees, be it shareholders, be it anyone.
Thank you. Now, just one question as a sequel to this. Do you see that in construction sites, I think the government has also indicated that you have to provide accommodation for the people. So do you see a change in the workplace as such?
Yes, certainly, because since you will have difficulty in getting workers to commute up and down, you will have to create some infrastructure for people, which will, depending on site to site, because some places you have no space also. Remember, it's not that easy. If you have a small project and you're digging up the basement, it's very difficult to find space to accommodate them. But then maybe in the nearby area, you can find at walking distance some plot of land where you can set up temporary housing on a rent basis. So we have to, I mean, there is no one formula that can fit every project, but people have to innovatively look at solutions and find solutions. But all said and done, if you create housing facilities, you create all that infrastructure, the number of people that you could work with will be much reduced. And also, you will have that much more investment to make, which may not be possible or viable. So you will have to somehow stagger the work to some extent.
Okay, thank you. We have Lipika Das from the Ambuja group. If the question is, if you could time travel, what one thing would you like to change in by the leadership decision taken in the recent past, given that you have the knowledge of the current turbulence now? This is a hypothetical situation.
I have
So
no
you have to
idea.
travel,
Because,
time travel.
well, if I had any wish, I would pray to God that please spare us from this trouble. I'm sure that the God has its own designs. And sometimes I feel that we must respect it, because if there is a design, it must be for something good, which we will only know much later. But for the time being, humanity is going through a very, very tough time all over the world in terms of both health challenge, anxiety, and economics. So if I had any wish, and if I could, somebody could listen to me, I would just pray that this didn't at all happen like this.
Excellent, excellent. Then we have Mr. Shibendu Das, also from the Ambuja group. What is true leadership to you in difficult times like this, when you are inundated with multiple distractions and negative news? How do you think a true leader efficiently tides over these challenges?
Well, first thing is to limit your consumption of news, because this news can be very depressing if you listen to it continuously. So my recommendation would be that do not spend more than 30 minutes. That's what I do. I just pick up one of those late evening news slots and listen to it for 30 minutes and shut the television promptly. Rest of the time I'm busy with my work, busy with reading, busy with trying to see some interesting YouTube historical channels, inspirational videos. There's lots of stuff, fortunately, at the push of a button available to you. So there's no dearth of keeping yourself busy and productively so. So that's what I would answer.
Very good. Thank you. I think what you say about not getting inundated with the news is a very important input. I think we should follow that very carefully. Okay, Ritesh Kohli says, as a leader, one has to toggle between the big picture as well as the micro aspects that are equally important. How do you balance yourself during this time of crisis? I think this is more or less similar to the earlier question. Anyway, would you like to take this?
I think I more or less covered it in my other.
Yeah. So how do you think an effective leadership can address the game-changing industrial trends that are going to emerge post this period to maintain the relevance of the organization in the new perspective? This is from Akash Roy.
See, when your ship is stuck in a storm, as a captain of that ship, your first job is to navigate the ship out of that storm, instead of wondering and figuring out where you will sail when you have got out of the storm and which destination you will take the next voyage to. So at the moment, we are in the thick of the storm. And as a captain of my ship, at least my job is to see that we are able to bring all its passengers and, see that we are able to navigate it out of the storm. So if you ask me personally, I haven't given any thought to what we should be doing post-COVID, because let us get out of this, let us stabilize the ship, let's get to the quieter waters, where we can feel that we are not rocking and rolling in the turbulent sea. And once we have reached there, we will figure out what we should do next. And that's really the state in which I am at the moment.
Great. Okay, Aspriha Mandal, 3 traits that a leader should demonstrate during this challenging time to inspire and motivate a team.
I've already answered that you must be fair.
Yeah, I know this is a question which is, anyway, would you like to add something to that?
No, not really.
Okay. Then Depamama Sinha, what has been your message to the leadership team within your organization? And what will you recommend to some of the young entrepreneurs to follow to cope up with this situation?
Well, I think one of the things I would say is that, anxiety can muddle up your mind. It is natural that when events happen which are most unprecedented like this one, and that has a cataclysmic effect on your life and lifestyle, and it will inevitably cause you anxiety. So managing anxiety is one of the most important things that we all need to do. A turbulent mind with a turbulent situation is a recipe for all wrong decisions. When things are very, very turbulent, then you have to be in a peaceful mind. I am reminded of that beautiful iconography of Lord Krishna standing in the middle of the battlefield in the Mahabharata, where there are conch shells blowing, there are elephants trumpeting, there are 2 armies lined up, one against the other, both baying for blood of the other. In the middle of that, with a light smile on his face, complete serenity on his face, he gives the Gita Gyan to Arjun, who has lost confidence. Now, that is called in that Sanskrit language the state of Sthita Prajna. Sthita Prajna, loosely translated into English, which is not an exact translation, means equipoise. Can you remain in a state of balance and poise in the middle of such a turbulent situation that you are in? Because if you are not, you will muddle up your mind and decisions will become all hazy and perhaps incorrect. So if you have a peaceful mind, there is a greater possibility that you will find some of the right decisions which will help navigate the ship out of the storm.
Thank you. I think what is very important, as you have mentioned, is to keep your mind calm. Then only you will be able to remove clutter and see the picture clearly. Anyway, that's an excellent suggestion, and I think we should take heed of that. There's a question from Mr. I can't make out the name, but sir, will the consumer behavior change post-COVID? How will India Incorporated react to this?
Well, consumer behavior should change post-COVID. It will be a real tragedy that if we go back to our old ways after such a major jolt. Now, one of the things that all of us would have noticed that there is a beautiful nip in the air. The atmosphere is clean. If you look up in the skies at night, you see the twinkling stars without any obstruction. You can almost, when the rain falls because of the rain, because of the nor'westers, you can smell the earth. I mean, this is Calcutta at its most beautiful. And I read, I think today only in the newspapers, that ever since there was a record of the pollution index, Calcutta has never recorded such a low thing. So this is something fantastic that has happened. The earth is healing. Even if men are slightly inconvenienced, we have put so much of pressure on planet Earth that this is a time that it is healing itself. So I do hope that once things come back, we will be more living a life of greater responsibility, of caring more for the environment, practicing sustainable practices, and generally being perhaps a little more compassionate as human beings. We have seen what level of distress people have had. We've also seen great human endeavor of people reaching out to other people. I think this attitude of extending a helping hand, of being there for everyone, is a very beautiful thing. And hopefully, this is something that we will carry on for a long time before, of course, old habits die hard and we jump back into the old ways. I hope not, but unfortunately, that inevitably seems to happen.
Thank you. There's a question from Mr. Suman Day. In the post-COVID era, can there be an alternative to the Chinese invasion in the market? Are there any superpowers like India with resource capability and manpower abundance who can challenge this?
Well, that's a very wide and open question. I mean, there is a global trade war being fought at various levels, and certainly because of this virus, there is a certain disadvantage that China finds itself. It would be foolish to underestimate China's potential to bounce back. But if you say that does it have some disadvantage that this virus has caused, certainly. Does this open up opportunities for some other emerging market countries like India? Yes, certainly. Will we be able to take advantage of it in the near future? Well, I certainly hope so. We've missed so many buses in the past. I certainly wish and pray that we don't miss this one, because this is certainly one of great opportunity for us to pick up from the lost ground.
Okay. There's a question from Sohini. She says, we are in work from home mode. Do you see this as a conscious decision in the future to follow a long distance employer-employee relationship? Companies like TCS are thinking in these lines.
Well, technology companies perhaps can do that because you work on a computer and it is possible to link up computers, but that's a very elite way of looking at it. You must understand that a very, very large part of our workforce actually have to work in factories or have to work in fields or even in the services sector, be it in healthcare or in hospitality. They have to work at the physical location. I mean, I can't understand how someone can work from home and see that a restaurant is able to serve food in the restaurant. So, or a hotel is able to service its clients by somebody working from home. So there would be many, many areas of activities that are impossible to do this. But yes, in the technology space, some part of it, or maybe even a large part of it, can move in this direction.
Thank you. There's a question which has come in. I mean, here, whether you have an opinion on this. From past events in history of our world, which leader, in your opinion, provides the best example of a leader in turbulent times, and why?
Well,
so this could be a personal opinion of somebody whom you admire.
Well, one of my all-time icons has been Mahatma Gandhi, and I don't think anything was more turbulent than the times in which he tried to wrest India's freedom from an oppressive imperial regime, which where they said that the sun never set on the British Empire, so that was as mighty as that. So therefore, he clearly is an impressive leader to me. You alluded to Winston Churchill, Theodore Roosevelt, are leaders who have also steered their countries out of difficult times. And there are many others. Nelson Mandela, in a very different way, not exactly in a warlike situation, but by the conduct of his life, was able to end apartheid in South Africa. There are leaders like that. I'm talking of political leaders. And there are, of course, other leaders in the field of philosophy, in the field of literature, who have given ideas and thoughts that have resonated till today. I think in a very significant sense, Vivekananda had a transformative role in the way India thinks and is India's ability to get itself understood to the Western world. I think we were seen as a country of backward thinking people till he was able to take the ideas of Vedanta across the 7 seas. So there have been various inspirational leaders, and I could speak for half an hour on that. So I think this is not the time to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And anyway, thank you very much. And with these very interesting inputs and very erudite interaction, I think we've now run out of time. Although I have a whole long list of questions, I must thank all those people who have sent in their questions. I must apologize that in the absence of time, we have had to restrict these questions to a very limited number. And I would now request our president, Mr. Amitabh Datta, to please convey his thanks to Mr. Neotia. Unmute, unmute. Please unmute, Mr. Datta. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Neotia, for a great and inspiring talk. And your question, the questions that you answered, one could appreciate that they really came from the heart, and you really believed in what you said, and you really practiced what you have preached all through. And that's what makes you what you are today. Well, thank you very much once again, and I think we all will take away a lot of wisdom that you shared with us. And we hope that at the end of it all, we will come through this COVID episode stronger people and hopefully better people. Thank you very much once again, Mr. Neotia. Thank you for being with us. Thank you.